Dear learners, welcome to Learning with Fun. Today, I'll be having a discussion on the poem called Daffodils, written by William Wordsworth. And for the convenience of the learners, I'll divide the video into three sections. In the first section, I'll have the line-by-line analysis of the text. And in the second section, I'll be giving you the meanings of some of the words from the text. And in the third and final section, I'll be talking about some figures of speech or the rhetorical expressions used in this particular poem. So, without wasting a single second, let's get into it. Let's have a close look at the poem called Daffodils by William Wordsworth. Now, before starting the poem, I would just like to tell you a few words. Written in 1802, this piece of poetry is not an imaginary poem, but based on actual observation and experience. In fact, Wordsworth's sister named Dorothy, who was very close to the heart of Wordsworth, gave us an account of the occasion which actually inspired Wordsworth to write this piece of poetry. She said, "When we were in the woods beyond Gow Barrow Park, we saw a few daffodils close to the waterside." That means he actually saw the daffodils while walking. It was a real observation. It is not an imaginary thing on which the poem is based. And this little piece of poetry brings out nature at its best. As we all know that Wordsworth was a great lover of nature. He was a nature priest. And this little piece of poetry raises nature to a height which few poets can reach. And this piece of poetry tells us how Wordsworth took uncommon delight or pleasure in the most commonplace things. Now, let's start the poem. I wandered lonely as a cloud. Actually, here in the beginning of the poem, the poet compares himself to a patch of cloud flying over vales and hills. And wandered means walked around without any special purpose. We wander, when we wander means we just have a walk and we don't have any particular aim. Just like that. He was having a walk, and he was just having a walk like the cloud does, that floats on high over vales and hills, that flies on high over valleys and hills. When all at once means all on a sudden, suddenly, I saw a crowd, a host. That means he came across, he saw a crowd, a host, means many, countless golden daffodils. The color of the daffodils was golden. And they were beside the lake and beneath the trees, that means under the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Actually, the word fluttering refers to the wings moving lightly and quickly. Actually, it refers to the birds flapping their wings. And here there is a comparison. The poet makes a comparison, and he says that the daffodils were flapping their wings as if, or they were fluttering, and as if they were dancing. Actually, the poet was so mesmerized to have a look at a lot of daffodils that he considered, or that he imagined, that the daffodils were dancing. Actually, breeze was blowing. Breeze means a light, gentle wind, and as it was blowing, the daffodils were moving their heads from one side to the other, and this is what seemed to the poet, that the daffodils were really dancing and fluttering. And now the poet goes on comparing the daffodils with so many other things. He says, continuous as the stars. Means they were continually shining like the stars do. and twinkle. Think of the rhyme that we read in our childhood, twinkle twinkle little star. So they were twinkling, the stars were twinkling on the Milky Way. Now the question is what a Milky Way is. Actually Milky Way refers to the galaxy, the system of stars that contain our sun and its planets, seen as a bright band in the night sky. They stretched, that means they spread out in never-ending line. This is what seemed to the poet, that the line where the daffodils were spread would never ever end. And along the margin of a bay, think of the Bay of Bengal. So the margin, that means the side of a bay. So there were countless daffodils spread around. 10,000 saw at a glance. And he says that he saw so many, countless. Did he really count and say that, did he really count the daffodils and say that, oh, it was 10,000, I counted one by one? This is not so. This is a poetical expression. This is a rhetorical expression which I'll discuss later on. 10,000 saw at a glance. That means he saw countless daffodils just within a fraction of a second. And what were they doing? They were tossing their heads. That means they were moving their heads from one side to the other in sprightly dance. And sprightly means lively and full of energy. They were full of energy and they were dancing with so much energy. The waves beside them danced. Actually, he was standing beside a lake, and along the margin of the lake he saw countless daffodils, and the waves on the lake were also dancing, because I think the breeze was blowing, that's why. So here both of them, the daffodils as well as the waves, were dancing. But who danced better? Definitely the daffodils, you can guess. So the waves beside them danced, but they outdid. They refers to the daffodils, but they outdid means they danced better. They outdid the sparkling waves in glee. The waves are really also beautiful because they were sparkling as well, and they were sparkling in glee, in delight. A poet could not but be gay. Actually, a poet has got no other alternative than be gay. Actually, a poet could not help being gay. Gay means happy or cheerful. Actually, in a company when there are so many beautiful daffodils, and especially when it is Wordsworth, definitely he would be enchanted by the beauty of daffodils. And that is why he says that he gets immeasurable or immense delight being in the company of daffodils. And that is why he says, in such a jocund, that means cheerful company. In the company, when he is in the company of daffodils, he has no other alternative but to be gay. I gazed and gazed. Actually, the word gazed has been repeated just to sense that he kept looking at the daffodils for long. And the word gazed means looked long and steadily. That is what the poet did, because he was so enchanted looking at the beautiful daffodils dancing and fluttering. But little thought. Actually, the word little has a negative sense. The poet at that particular moment, when he was just looking at the daffodils and drinking the pleasure out of them, he at that very moment could not think what wealth he is now gaining, he is now collecting right at this moment, and this will be realized by the poet in future. That he'll talk about just in the last stanza. So what wealth the show means the show of the daffodils to me had brought. Actually, at that very moment I could not think what wealth, and this wealth does not refer to the physical wealth, it is the wealth of the mind that the poet has gained just by being in close communion with nature, and that is what always happens with Wordsworth. Now have a look at the last stanza of the poem. For oft when on my couch I lie. That means on my couch refers to a kind of bed. So when on my couch I lie in vacant mode. Vacant means when he is empty, when he has nothing to do or think about. Or in pensive mode. Pensive mode means when the poet is engaged in sad or serious thought. Just at that moment, there flash upon that inward eye. They flash upon the inward eye. That means this refers to the eye of imagination the poet has. The flash upon means the poet quickly recalls the beautiful show that he had days back. Which is the bliss of solitude. Actually, this is a very beautiful phrase, the bliss of solitude. Actually, solitude means the state or situation of being alone. And bliss means extreme happiness or great joy or immense joy. Actually, when we are in a pensive mood or when we are in a vacant mood, we generally get sad. But this is not the case with the poet Wordsworth. Whenever he is in a sad mood, whenever he is in a vacant or empty mood, the daffodils flash upon his eyes. He just recalls, he can visualize, he can see the daffodils in his mind's eye and get rejuvenated, get cheerful. And then my heart with pleasure fills. So his heart is filled with pleasure unspeakable and dances with the daffodils. Actually, his heart starts dancing like the daffodils did days before. Let's have a quick look at the words written by me. I thought that these words might be helpful for you. That's why I have written down. So without wasting much time, I would just like to have a quick read of the meanings of the words I have written down. The first word is wandered, means walked around without any special purpose or aim. A crowd or host means many or countless. Fluttering refers to the wings moving lightly and quickly. Breeze refers to a light or gentle wind. Milky Way refers to the galaxy, or it is the system of stars that contain our sun and its planets, seen as a bright band in the night sky. Tossing means moving from one side to the other. That means moving from side to side. Sprightly means lively and full of energy. In glee means in great delight. Gay means happy. Jocund means cheerful. Gauged means looked long and steadily. Pensive means engaged in sad or serious thought. Solitude means the state or situation of being alone. Bliss means great joy. You can note down the words if you think they are helpful to you. I have come to the third and final part of my video, and in this part I'll be talking about some of the rhetorical expressions or figures of speech used in this particular poem. Now, whoever thinks it useful may watch this part, and those students who think it is not useful may stop watching the video. Okay, let's start. The first line, I wandered lonely as a cloud, is an example of a simile. Actually, in the case of a simile, a comparison is made between two different objects with the help of the words like as, like, so, such, etc. We can remember a famous line from Ulysses, written by Tennyson, to follow knowledge like a sinking star beyond the utmost bound of human thought. Actually, here in the first line, the poet compares himself to a cloud, and here a human being is compared to a cloud. That means two different objects are compared, and here they are compared with the help of the word as. That is why it is an example of a simile. The next example I have already tick marked, you can notice them. Fluttering and dancing in the bridge. This is a case of personification. Now the question is, what personification is? Actually, in the case of personification, inanimate objects or abstract ideas are endowed with the attributes of human beings. Actually, we ascribe human feelings or emotions to inanimate objects or ideas. And these are the cases of personification. From the word person comes the verb personify, and from the verb personify comes the noun personification. So here the daffodils are considered to be having human feelings, and that is why they are fluttering and they are dancing. The next example I'll have is the example here. Here it goes, 10,000 saw I at a glance. Now this particular sentence can be seen from two different angles. That means it has two different rhetorical expressions. That means it can be considered to have two different expressions. 10,000 saw I at a glance could be an example of hyperbole, and in the case of a hyperbole, a deliberate overstatement is made, and it is made for the sake of emphasis, and this figure of speech is also known as exaggeration. And to exaggerate means to make an overstatement. Hyperbole matlab bada chada ke bole. Well, so we can remember a line from Macbeth. In Macbeth, Lady Macbeth says, "Here's the smell of blood still. All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand." This is also an example of hyperbole. Actually here, 10,000 saw I at a glance. What does the poet mean by this line? 10,000, did he count them? Definitely not. Actually 10,000 here refers to many or countless. Sometimes we say, "Hey, I have told you 1,000 times, and why don't you listen to me?" Actually, did I count? 1,000 times here means so many times or many a time. So the same sentence I have told you, 10,000 saw I at a glance, can be seen from a different angle. It could be taken as an example of inversion or hyperbaton. And now what is hyperbaton? In the case of a hyperbaton, the grammatical order of words is changed or inverted. Actually, the proper grammatical order for this sentence could have been or should have been, "I saw 10,000 at a glance." But the order has been inverted. It has been changed just for the sake of emphasis, just to convey aesthetic sense. Well, thanks for watching.